Hey everyone, today we're going to go on a little investigation, a detective story that's actually happening inside your body right this very second. We're talking about pathology, the science of figuring out what goes wrong in our bodies and how this incredible internal team of detectives solves the case. I mean, really think about it for a second. You get a tiny cut or a little splinter. You might not even think twice about it. But inside your body? Oh, it's a whole different story. An entire emergency response system just kicked into high gear. It's basically a microscopic crime scene, and a full-blown investigation has just been launched. That's what we're going to unpack today. Okay, so before we rush off to the crime scene, we need to meet our lead detective and, understand the tools they're working with. This is the science of pathology. So what exactly is pathology? Well, it's the official science of studying disease. The best way to think about it is like forensics, but for the body. Pathologists are detectives. They don't just ask, hey, what's wrong? No. They dig deeper. They investigate the how and the why, looking at all the tiny changes in our cells and our tissues to piece together the entire story of what's going on. Every good detective has a method, right? A system. For a pathologist, it all boils down to these 4 key steps. First up, etiology. What's the cause? What's the culprit? Is it a bacteria, a virus, maybe a physical injury? Next, pathogenesis. Okay, how did it all go down? What was the chain of events that led from that cause to the actual damage? Third, the pathological picture. This is the evidence. What does the crime scene look like, both to the naked eye and under the microscope? And finally, fate. What's the outcome? What's the end of the story? Do we recover, or does it lead to something worse? All right, let's open our first case file. We're on the scene. An injury has just occurred. The body's very first response is to sound the alarm. Hit the big red button and dispatch all emergency services. This whole process, it's called inflammation. And the name itself gives us a massive clue. The word inflame literally means to set fire. And honestly, that is the perfect way to think about what's happening. Your body is starting a very controlled biological fire to burn out any invaders and clear away all the damaged debris. It's pretty amazing. And just like any fire, this internal alarm system, it leaves behind some pretty clear, unmistakable evidence. At any site of what we call acute inflammation, our body's investigation team will find 5 classic or cardinal clues that tell them exactly what is going on. And here they are, the 5 big signs. First, you've got rubor, which is redness, and calor, which is heat. That's because blood vessels open up wide to rush responders to the scene. It's literally the heat from that fire. Next up is tumor. And no, not that kind of tumor. It just means swelling, as fluid rushes in to flood the area. Then comes dolor, or pain. That's your body's built-in alarm system screaming, hey, pay attention, something's wrong here. And all of this together can lead to the final sign, function lasieza, a loss of function, which basically forces you to protect the injured part while it heals. So who are these first responders rushing to the scene? Well, let me introduce you to the neutrophils. These guys are the microscopic SWAT team of your immune system. Seriously, within the first couple of days of an injury, they just swarm the area. And their main job is something called phagocytosis, which is really just a fancy word for eating. They literally go around gobbling up and digesting any invading bacteria to neutralize the threat. Now, you gotta know, not all investigations are the same. You have acute inflammation, which is kind of like a quick case. Think of that splinter. It happens fast, the neutrophils rush in, clean it all up, and it's over in a few days. But then you have chronic inflammation. This is more like a long, drawn-out cold case. The start is gradual, it lasts a long time, and the body has to bring in a totally different set of investigators, like macrophages and lymphocytes, for a long-term siege against an enemy it just can't get rid of easily. Okay, our next case file takes us from a local crime scene to a much bigger, more systemic problem. I want you to think of your circulatory system, your veins and arteries, as a massive highway network, constantly transporting vital supplies to every corner of your body. But sometimes you get major traffic jams, major disturbances on this highway. And one of the most common disturbances is something called edema. You can think of this as a major leak in the highway system. Fluid that's supposed to be neatly contained inside the blood vessels starts seeping out and just pooling in the surrounding tissues. And that's what causes that puffy swelling. And here's what's cool. Our pathologist detective can actually analyze the fluid from that leak. And it's going to be one of 2 types. If it's an exudate, it's inflammatory. It'll be cloudy and full of protein and cells. kind of like the debris left over from a big battle. A transitate, on the other hand, is non-inflammatory. It's clear with very little protein. It suggests the leak is just from a pressure problem, not a fight. So another huge problem you can have on this circulatory highway is a total roadblock. This is called thrombosis. It's the formation of a solid clot, called a thrombus, smack in the middle of a blood vessel while you're still alive. And as you can imagine, this can be incredibly dangerous because it blocks the flow of all those essential supplies. Now, this is a really critical point for our detective. How do they know if a clot was the killer, or if it just formed harmlessly after death? Well, they look for clues. A thrombus that formed in life is going to be rough, kind of crumbly, and stuck firmly to the vessel wall right where the trouble started. A post-mortem clot, though, is smooth, elastic, and not attached at all. It's basically just blood that's settled after the fact. Making that distinction is absolutely vital. So for our final case file, let's look at what happens after the main investigation is over. The threat's been neutralized, the highway is clear. What happens next? Well, the final phase begins, cleaning up the crime scene and, of course, rebuilding the damage. And that, my friends, is healing. The body has two main strategies for this. The absolute best-case scenario is regeneration. That's where the damaged cells are replaced by perfect, identical copies. But if that's not possible, we have option 2, substitution. This is where the body can't rebuild perfectly, so it just patches up the area with connective tissue, which we all know as a scar. And the path the body takes really depends on the scale of the damage. We call healing by first intention what happens with a clean, surgical type cut. The edges are nice and close, it heals up super fast, and you're left with a tiny scar. But healing by second intention, that's for a big, open, messy wound. There's a lot of tissue missing, the edges are all jagged, and the body has to launch a massive reconstruction project that takes way longer and, you guessed it, leaves a much bigger scar. So what's the foundation for this whole reconstruction effort? Well, it's this incredible material called granulation tissue. You can think of it as a temporary, living scaffold made up of tons of tiny new blood vessels and special cells called fibroblasts. This scaffold fills in the wound, giving it the structure and all the nutrients needed to build the final repair on top of it. So, after reviewing all the case files, we've seen the initial alarm, the highway disasters, the final reconstruction. What's the pathologist's final verdict? What's the big picture takeaway from all of this? The verdict is this. Your body is an absolutely brilliant and tireless detective. Every single day, without you even thinking about it, it is performing these incredible feats. It identifies the cause of a problem, it launches an immediate and powerful defense, it manages system-wide crises, and then it meticulously rebuilds whatever was broken. All of this is just to keep you going. And that kind of leaves us with one final big thought. This whole complex, amazing detective story is playing out inside you all the time. Your body is the expert investigator. It's always on the case. So the real question becomes, knowing all this, how can you be a better partner in that investigation? What can you do to help it do its job? Something to think about.